In this video, we'll be going over the Everything Presence 1 smart home motion sensor. If you've been around home automation for a while, then you know that infrared sensors can kind of be hit or miss. Sometimes they only detect large objects and will sometimes stop detecting motion when you least expect it. We'll unbox it, we'll go over the features and the price, and then we'll get it hooked into Home Assistant and create a test automation. That way we can make sure that it works. So let's check it out. So the Everything Presence 1 comes in a reasonably small box. Once we open it up, we can see that it's rather Spartan inside. There's just the power cable and then the sensor and stand itself, and that's it. As you can see, there's just a USB-C to USB-A cable with the right angle adapter on the USB-C portion. That way it makes it easier to tuck underneath the sensor once you get it installed. Now the Everything Presence 1 is really well packed. So well packed, in fact, that it's actually kind of difficult to get out. It has the durable foam to keep it padded during shipping so it doesn't get damaged, but when you try to get it out of the foam, it's actually really difficult so it doesn't slide out as easily as I would have hoped. So what I had to do was pull the middle part of the foam up so that the entire foam piece comes out of the box, and that made it easier to then create some space on the side of the sensor and then pull the sensor out entirely. So once you get the sensor out of the packing foam, you'll see that it has a firm base that can be moved around depending on what angle you need it installed. There's two slats at the bottom that you can use for wall mounting, and then you can turn the sensor in different ways depending on what your needs are. It's made of a tough, durable plastic, which to me says that it's built to last and it's not just some cheap crap you got off of Amazon. The Everything Presence 1 currently goes for $65 on the everythingsmart.io website. I'll drop a link to it in the description if you're interested in checking that out. Keep in mind they do ship from the United Kingdom, so depending on where you're at in the world, shipping times may vary. The Everything Presence 1 has a light, humidity, and temperature sensor on board, but the most important features of the Everything Presence 1 are the fact that it has two types of motion sensors. It has a typical infrared sensor just like any other motion sensor, but what makes this product different is that it has a millimeter wave sensor, which is a more accurate type of motion detector. The infrared sensor itself has about 12 meters of detection range, which is about 39 or 40 feet. The millimeter wave sensor, on the other hand, has a 25-meter detection zone, which is about 80 feet. Now that's of course in perfect conditions. It may not be that exact range depending on your scenario, but it's generally a good feeling for how well these sensors can detect motion within a specific area. There are generally two different ways that you can install the Everything Presence 1. You can install it freeform, where you can just put it on, a bookshelf or some sort of cabinet or something like that. That way it's higher up and it can see all of the different areas in the room or wherever you end up putting it. And then the second way is you can wall mount the stand on the bottom of the Everything Presence 1 above a doorway, such as a bedroom or a bathroom or something like that. Using the stand is generally the easier way to get this initially set up. Once you know where you want it to go, then if you want to wall mount it, then that would be great too. No matter which one you choose, just make sure that the power cable is long enough to reach an outlet or a USB plug somewhere. The included cable was fairly long, but it's not going to be long enough for all use cases, especially if you're mounting it high on a wall somewhere. It's probably not going to reach, so you might need a longer cable depending on where you install it. But before we install the Everything Presence 1 into Home Assistant, we first need to add Bluetooth. In order for the Everything Presence 1 to be installed, it requires Bluetooth for the initial setup. Basically, you take a USB dongle like this, and you put it into your Home Assistant instance, such as your Home Assistant Green, and then you go into the Devices and Services menu and configure the newly discovered Bluetooth adapter. I'll leave a link in the description to this specific Bluetooth adapter. I've been using it for years and it's been rock solid for me that whole time. So check that out if you're interested. On the integrations page, you should see the Everything Presence 1 sensor show up here. If not, you can search for the ESPHome via BLE integration and you'll be able to add it the same way. We're going to go ahead and click Add on the Auto Discover. Click Submit. You'll then be prompted to enter your Wi-Fi credentials so that your Everything Presence 1 can connect to your Wi-Fi. So go ahead and enter those here. So now this device is successfully connected to your Wi-Fi. If you click Close, you should also see the Everything Presence 1 auto detected here under the ESPHome integration. So go ahead and click Add. So we're going to click Submit, and it will say device created, and then you can choose an area if you want, and then go ahead and click finish. Over here on the ESPHome integration within Home Assistant, we can see that the Everything Presence 1 has been added right here. If you click on this one device link, it will send you straight to the device page. Now, first we see this sensors box. This shows you all the different sensors that are on the Everything Presence 1. We can see that there are several sensor readings in this top box right here in the middle, and then down here on the bottom is where the Everything Presence 1 can be configured for various settings. To test that the sensors are working correctly, we can go through some of these and simulate different conditions to make sure that they change. For the humidity sensor, you can just breathe on it heavily for a moment or two, and it will change values. And you should see the humidity number go up within the Home Assistant sensor. Same thing with the illuminance. Now for the motion detectors, I'll have to physically leave the room and come back in to trigger the sensor changing. As you can see, both of those were detected immediately when I walked in the room. And then of course the temperature sensor just measures the temperature in the room. One thing to know about the temperature sensor, given that there's other parts that are on the Everything Presence 1 that are generating heat, this might be slightly higher than what the actual temperature in the room might be. So if you needed to add an offset, you can go down here into the configuration and change the offset down here. So let's say you wanted to subtract 2 degrees from the sensor, you could type that in and it would automatically adjust the temperature sensor reading. In my experience, I've found that having a -1 or -2 degrees offset is usually pretty accurate. Let's go over the configuration options on the Everything Presence 1. To start, there's a status LED that you can turn on or off. Quite honestly, I turn this off because I find that LED kind of annoying. There are these 2 offset values, generally for humidity and illuminance. I find that the defaults are great for my scenario, so I leave those as 0. There's another LED that you can turn on or off. I usually leave that one off too. Now, these settings down here control the millimeter wave sensors configurations. For example, this setting controls the maximum distance that the sensor will look for movement on its millimeter wave sensors. Keep in mind, the further away the sensor is from a subject, the more likely that false positives will be introduced. In the USA, the average bedroom is about 12 feet by 12 feet, which is approximately 4 meters or so. This means that the max distance could be set to something like 6 meters, and you would still be able to detect people or objects or other things in a bedroom. If you make this max distance too powerful, the sensor might actually detect things through the walls, depending on how thin your walls are. Just make sure you set it to a reasonable distance depending on where you put it. And similarly, you can control the minimum distance of this sensor. Quite honestly, you should probably leave it at 0. Now, for a lot of these sensors down here, these sensors tend to balance both accuracy and responsiveness. So for example, this trigger sensitivity controls how sensitive the sensor will be when it first detects motion. This sustain sensitivity toggle will control how much the Everything Presence 1 maintains a detected presence after the initial detection. Generally speaking, you should leave these sensors at the default values, and then if you run into problems later with your sensor detecting, you can come in here and toggle some of these settings and change them as you need to. If you change the distance, the min or max distances, then you need to come down here and click press for it to be applied. And same thing for the sensitivity. If you change any of these sensitivity values, you need to come down here and click press so that the values are applied on the board. Let me know in the comments whether you need any help with any of these configurations, and I'll do my best to help you out. But what's this occupancy sensor here in the middle? Well, basically this occupancy sensor is a combination of both the millimeter wave and the infrared sensor to detect when one of them has a finding. So instead of needing to check for both of these in your automations, you can check for just the occupancy. So let's go ahead and add this sensor to an automation to make sure that we can control things with the Everything Presence 1. Over here on the automations page, you can add a new automation. For the trigger, you can click on that and you will click device. Under the device section, we can search for Everything Presence 1. You will want to make sure to choose this ESPHome sensor. After you select the ESPHome sensor, you can choose which trigger you want in this automation. You can see there's a whole host of triggers here. under the drop down, like we mentioned a moment ago, to detect motion on either the millimeter wave or the infrared, we are going to use this occupancy sensor. The then do section, we're going to take an action, and we will also click device. So in this case, I want to turn on some lights. I have a guest bedroom light switch. We can go ahead over here and click save, and we can give it a name. If I'm out in the hallway and the sensor is about 11 or 12 feet or so from the door entrance, the sensor immediately picks me up and turns on the lights. That worked really fast. So on here in the ESPHome settings page, if we go back to the main integration page, you'll see that under Bluetooth, there are now 2 devices instead of just 1. So if we click in here, we can see that there's still our Bluetooth adapter that we had before, but now there is the Everything Presence one added to the Bluetooth integration. It happened automatically as part of the initial setup, so I didn't have to do anything in order to add it. Now, because it's a proxy, that means it will also see any Bluetooth devices within its range. So you can click Configure. And so under this Advertisement Monitor section, you can click Advertisement Monitor, and it might be expanded or collapsed, but you'll be able to see your Bluetooth adapter here and all the devices that it sees, and then the Everything Presence one. If you expand this, you can see all the devices that it sees. And if you have the Home Assistant 2025.6 update or later installed, you can click on this visualization and you can see all the different devices that not only the adapter sees, but also the ones that the Everything Presence 1 sees. So if your Everything Presence 1 can detect a Bluetooth device that is compatible with Home Assistant, you will see it here listed on the Discover page. That's pretty sweet. But what if you don't have any other devices to actually use with the Everything Presence 1? That's where a good Zigbee coordinator, such as the Sonoff ZBDongle-P, comes into play. So check out this video where I review and install the Sonoff ZBDongle-P. With the Sonoff installed, you'll be able to easily pair the Everything Presence 1 in an automation with any number of Zigbee light switches. So I will see you in the next one.